Okay, today we're going to talk about moving forward despite the fear that you might experience in that. And how do you move forward despite the fear in this environment of uncertainty? And to do that, we're going to talk to Lana Roy from Goats to Unicorns, which is a creative spark of intensity and many other things. And I think I'm going to give you a moment to describe yourself, Lana, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thanks, Willem. So yeah, there's a few terms I call myself. One is a creative catalyst or creative genius igniter.
Okay.
And what is a catalyst? So it's someone who delves deep into understanding the reason why and really understands and gets a great knowledge of what has happened, in my case, to creativity. And not that we just need to ignite it or we just need to be able to be creative. I actually have gone into studying why people lack creativity. And one thing I think I've realized most amongst all the research I've done is the fear of entering the unknown.
Okay.
So, in terms of what does that really mean?
Yeah, because one thing I found working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and it's something I get often, is, I've always wanted to start my business, and then I ask, this always, how long has it been? And it's like
Yeah,
2 years, 3 years, 5 years. The worst, and I'm sorry for adding that label, so far has been 10 years. I've been wanting to start my own business for 10 years. And that is a common fear that a lot of people face. And I think many people who watch this interview with us might be on that going, you know what, if I look, there's no jobs out there. The economy is not, because of all this viral thing. So I can't get a job. I'm hungry. I need to take care of myself, and but I'm afraid to move forward. So yeah, I see what you mean about that. Yeah, let's unpack
yeah.
that a bit.
So let's unpack and understand what when we say people are scared to enter the unknown, what is it they're really scared about? And look, there could be many reasons, but the biggest reason is failure.
Hmm.
We are brought up in a society where um, we enter a school system, and that school system, we write exams and we write tests, and from day one, we are taught we need to pass. And if you're a failure, if you fail rather, is that you're a failure.
Yeah.
How many times, I mean, you read it all the time, is that, oh, there are so many people who failed from Thomas Edison to Einstein to some of the biggest names out there today.
Hmm.
And they all have a common theme. They've all failed somewhere along the line, but they haven't let that stop them. They've used it as lessons and they've learned, okay, how can I do it better? How can
Hmm.
I improve? But the problem is we aren't taught that. We really are taught in schools or in our environments that failure is not okay. And that's why when I see a lot of young people wanting to start businesses, and I'm actually been dealing with a few lately with exactly this. They have the idea, they have the support, they've got everything going for them, and yet they are frozen because they are scared to enter that unknown. They are scared of failure. They are scared of worried what their parents are going to think or what their friends are going to think or if they fail. Instead of just going head back into it and just doing whatever and trying to make it happen, they
Hmm.
freeze. And this freeze not only obviously doesn't enhance their process or their progress, it also freezes their creativity, their innovation,
Oh, absolutely.
because creativity is really about entering the unknown. You see, we are taught predictable behavior. So, as human beings, we are really predictable. And often that's why I'll say to people, right, let's come up with a solution for a particular problem. And I can promise you, Willem, I will know at least the first 4 or 5 that they will come up with.
Yeah.
Only after we are beyond those 4 or 5 do we start to actually enter the unknown. And that's when you start to see the innovative ideas, the ideas that are really something to look at. And it's hard. You'd think it would be easy, but it is so hard for people to go below. Because you see, here is, if we look at a graph, the above is the known, and going underneath the graph is the unknown. And to go below that line is really, really, really difficult. So I guess the question is, like, how do we solve this?
Yes.
How do we actually allow ourselves? So
Okay.
the first one is vulnerability. We have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. If
That's
we
difficult.
don't, we're never going to progress.
Yeah, I
We
always
have
tell
to.
people I'm not a big fan of cool people because they're not vulnerable enough to learn. It's like, yeah, I know that, and I know that. They're like, no, you don't. And if
Know
you
it
do know
alls.
that,
Yeah, we call them know
yeah,
it
if
alls.
yeah, and if you ripe, you rot. If you green, you grow. I think it was John D. Martini that said that one. Okay, cool. So yes, be
So,
vulnerable.
okay, be vulnerable. Okay, then get beyond what is, or rather, what other people are thinking. So that's a practice called divergent thinking.
Mm,
And how we can just practice ourselves is saying, okay, if I have a pair of glasses here, what are alternative uses that I could use for these glasses other than glasses? Yeah,
I can start a fire.
yeah, just by the what you call it, the
Yeah,
reflection and the
yeah.
light.
I
Yes,
love
and
that
as I
one.
said, I'm sure we could use them as maybe hair clips. I sometimes use it to keep my hair out my eyes.
Absolutely.
Or, as I said, we could take out probably the lenses and put in something else, or we can use it as like to hold stuff, whatever the cat can carry stuff. So
Yeah.
this practice of divergent thinking is something that we don't do enough
No,
in schools, because in schools we practice convergent thinking, which is
absolutely.
we're taught a specific way how to do something when we follow that formula.
Okay, so
And
I just want to clear up divergent and convergent. Divergent is making less more. So starting with this, like we started the glasses and coming up with a lot of ideas, while convergent thinking is taking a lot and making it less down to something.
correct.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so when do you practice convergent thinking? When you've done your divergent thinking.
Yeah.
So when we've got 20 different ideas that we can use my glasses for, then we converge our thinking in terms of, we say, what is the most practical? Okay, because some of those are impractical, some of those are not going to work. And we start to narrow this thinking down. And that's how we start to come up with some ideas in terms of entering an unknown, is just getting our mind to
Mm.
practice and coming up with ideas. And what is the problem there? Why do kids now, I don't know, unless they really got something to say, and some kids just talk for the sake of it, their kids don't ask any more questions, or they don't give ideas, because why? They're very scared that someone is going to judge them. They're going to judge their idea, or they're going to reject their idea. So it's easier
Absolutely.
now to keep
And
quiet.
I want to add something to that. And I always tell it to young people when I speak to young people, and I say to them, we're so obsessed of what people think about us. And don't worry about that, because they're not really paying attention to you, because they're just paying attention to thinking that everybody else is thinking about them. So nobody is really thinking about you. So just do whatever the hell you want.
So there's also on the internet, I can't remember the exact name of the guy, something Shi Ching or something. And actually, what he did was, it was called, is it 100 days of rejection?
Hmm.
And what he would do is every day he would come up with something crazy. Like, he'd go to what you call the donut um that famous donut shop here in
Oh,
South
oh,
Africa.
one of those.
Krispy
Yes.
Kreme. So he'd go to Krispy Kreme, for example, one day, and he'd say to them, "Please, may I have donuts? I want in the rainbow colors."
Hmm.
And sometimes they would actually do it, and sometimes they'd reject it. Or he'd phone a hotel and say, "Please, I'd like to make a booking for a room." And he would say, they would say, "How much?" They'd say, like 2,000 Rand or 3,000 Rand. And he'd say, "But sorry, I've only got 200 Rand." And he did all these things with the intention of being rejected. And half the time he wasn't rejected.
Interesting.
So even the hotel came back to him and said, "Well, maybe we can help you now. And, you can pay the rest at a later stage." So it's interesting that you think you're going to be rejected. And this is the problem with us humans, is that we anticipate an ending before it's actually happened.
Hmm.
And what happens then is that we don't even take the chance. We don't even ask the question, which brings me to the next point is how do we enter that unknown?
Hmm.
And I guess the word curiosity killed the cat, but it is curiosity. It is challenging assumptions.
Yeah.
You see, we just accept things as status quo and as norm. And I always use a great example of the 8-hour workday. So why do people work 8 hours a day? Who one day woke up and said we must work 8 hours a day? Where did that become the norm? Why do we still, since the first industrial revolution, working 8 hours a day? And it was started in the first industrial revolution, where equipment, electric equipment was brought on board, and they um, started to use equipment or machinery, and they couldn't switch off the machinery. It just costs too much and would take too long for the machines to
Start up again.
replenish themselves. So
Yeah.
they kept the machines running for 24 hours a day. So they needed to create 3 shifts of 8 hours each that people would work. And that's actually how the 8-hour day was
No
actually
way.
born. And that was first industrial revolution. We're now in the fourth, and we're still so called to working 8 hours a day.
Yes.
But companies are questioning this. And I think Corona has been definitely an accelerator to changing this. Either people are working longer or they're working shorter, because it doesn't take them that long to get to work, and they're working shorter hours and accomplishing a lot more. And this is the things that we need to be curious. We need to be that child in that classroom that says why.
That's
Um,
my son.
yeah. And you know what? I encourage that.
Yes.
Providing they're not trying to disrupt or
Yes.
distract the class, because some of
Yes.
kids do that to get
Yeah.
attention. But for those that ask, we must never ever condone that behavior.
Hmm.
And because by doing that, it also encourages people to enter that unknown, to
Hmm.
be able to take that step and know that if you ask a question, there's could be a reason for
Yes.
that, and you can question the way things are. And yeah, these areas of vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable, to be able to practice divergent thinking, to be able to be curious and ask the questions, allows us to dip into that unknown. And that's really where the fun and where the creativity and where real work actually um, can make a true difference in someone's life. And
Yeah. And, and
when
and it can be fun. I mean, I helped my son explore perspective the other day. So I got him to get up on the kitchen counter. He stood in the coffee table. He stood in the weirdest of places in the house and was like, "Can I do this?" I was like, "Come on, let me join you." And we stood on the kitchen counter like, "Hey, I like this." And you're like, "Wow, things really look different." And it was a lot of giggles. We had a lot of fun, but it gave him perspective.
100%,
And
and
it
we
was
saw them
fun.
from a
And that's the key
different
thing. It doesn't have to be.
perspective.
I mean, most of the business that I do, my son comments that says, work for you is like playing Lego for me. And I'm like, absolutely. I love what I do because it's
Yeah,
fun.
and I'm so lucky as well. I can push those boundaries and push those limits with people, and be able to really bring out and reignite their creativity
Absolutely.
like it. But
Absolutely.
people have to get past
Yeah.
this rejection. They have to get past this failure. And those are huge things because, as I said, we've been brought up in a society where we are judged by who and what we do. We
And
are judged by what we say. And yeah, we do get rejected and
more than
we
ever.
don't like it.
Yeah. But we also have to, I want to add two things. It doesn't have to be big. Start small. Okay. Just start small. And something else that I think people need to realize, if you do something and you don't get rejection, you don't get pushback, and you don't get people saying, well, and judging it, in my experience, you're doing nothing. You're simply maintaining the status quo. The problems that are today, you're helping to recreate tomorrow. It's when I started with a human entrepreneur saying, entrepreneurship is the biggest lie ever sold to people because it doesn't work. I had entrepreneur gurus set up 2-hour lunches with me and going, what is this BS? I go like, wow, now I'm spot on because I'm stepping on people's toes. And that's the only way that we change things. If you really want to have an impact in this world, you have to take a few slaps and be
Yeah.
ready to stick out your head.
Yeah, you're never gonna grow if you remain status quo. If you remain like this, you're never gonna grow. And I think, this is what, when we started off speaking about is that real growth,
Yes.
real creativity, real progress is about dealing with this fear of entering the unknown. And as I said, our four key areas is allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow yourself to think of, don't come up with what you think everyone else is going to come up with and that you think your first or second solution is so unique, because I promise you everyone else has thought of that as well. You've got to go push those boundaries, and yeah, you've got to take the chance. And that is the real essence, is if I if you have to leave this talk today and and learn one thing, for me it's that to grow in the unknown, to be able to enter that unknown, allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to be rejected, and don't fear that failure. We all fail, and we are all rejected 100%. And we don't have to be these perfect human specimens that we are taught at school that that's what we have to be. And growth is through learning, growth is through failure, growth is through vulnerability. And
And
that
and I'm
is key to
and I'm
moving forward in today's world.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad you're bringing this up. I remember I sat in the offices with one of the entrepreneurs that are currently on the Human Entrepreneur Program, and I shared something with them that I taught my son when he was just before he turned 8. And what I found is my son wouldn't do on his math app on his tablet. He did the addition and the plus and minus thingy keys and the multiplication and division. He went like, uh-uh. And I asked him, why aren't you doing it? And he said, because it's difficult. I said, okay, cool, Christian. Now listen up. If you aim for simplicity, which most people want, they want a simple life, just easy. If you aim for simplicity, you will end up in complexity. And if you aim for complexity, you will end up in simplicity. And we're like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you consistently try to avoid the difficult things in life, as life goes on and you don't grow with it, things will get exponentially difficult and life will be hell. But if you consistently do and attack the difficult things in life, like most successful billionaires do, life will become simple and easy. Have you seen billionaires work themselves to death? No, they usually have a pina colada in hand or somewhere in an S class Merc or some private jet, having a simple life. Why? Because they focus on attacking the difficult things. And if you
Yeah,
don't,
they're not scared.
yeah, life
We
will continue if you decide to participate or not. If you don't participate and do the difficult things, it's gonna be hell. I tried that before. It didn't work well.
And
Anyway,
it's such a sense of accomplishment to actually get into the unknown and come out on the other side. But as I said, you have to start. You have
mm,
to start somewhere. And as you mentioned earlier, you start with small little steps and you do small little things that, will allow you to do the big thing eventually.
yeah,
And it's just being vulnerable with someone, whether it's your boss, and telling them something that's been aggravating you, or it's a matter of being vulnerable with your friends and telling them something that happened to you, and that you never wanted to share with anyone because of ABC. It's
mm,
just starting with those little things, and then, as I said, being curious and practicing, you know more thinking, and yeah, this is how we have to start. And I promise
okay,
you, it has changed my life, or changed my world, in terms of how I've started to wear sometimes my heart on my sleeve. So I've changed away from I've allowed myself to be vulnerable in situations, knowing that the outcome could be very unpleasant.
mm,
But at the same time, most often, you come out on the other side stronger, more determined, and with greater knowledge.
mm,
And yeah, and then, yeah, being vulnerable allows you to enter the creative part, and that allows your brain and allows your muscle to expand. We actually call it the dorsal prefrontal cortex here. and
okay,
and that muscle over the years has decreased, or it's contracted, because it's that same muscle that is telling you, don't cross the road if they see cars coming, don't do this, don't speak bad about your mother-in-law to your husband, or whatever the case may be. It's that thing that's preventing you, and contracted and said, don't do this. So we have to expand it again, and by doing that is by allowing ourselves to actually be more vulnerable into that unknown space, and allow that muscle to expand, which is really for creative purposes, and allow us to be innovative human beings that we actually are.
okay. No, that's great. I want to thank you for this. It's was insightful. What I like about your advice is it's simple. It's not easy. I can
No.
argue with that, but it's simple. And you can start all of this with another person. Just be vulnerable with another person, and so forth and so and between the two of you can create a safe environment. But yeah, I want to thank you for this, and thank you for joining me, and thank you for taking the time to teach some of the amazing work that you have. Obviously, I will include your contact details and your URL for your website here. Please go and visit Lana's website. I've attended some of your workshops and they are fun. You laugh and you learn about yourself and you get new perspectives and you live in this creative soup of excitement and fun. And I want to thank you, Lana.
Well, thanks so much. And you learn to be the most creative person that you can possibly be. And thanks, Willem, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Lana.